Where the hell have you been, USL*T? His words cut through me like a knife, the kind of humiliation that sinks into your bones. Everyone laughed. Everyone except me. I felt my chest tighten, my hands tremble, and for a second I wanted to disappear. But deep inside, a fire ignited, a craving for justice I could not ignore. What he did not know, what no one could imagine, was that New Year's Eve was going to be his undoing. By the time the clock struck 12, the tables would turn, and he would learn what it truly meant to underestimate me. I am Emily, 26 years old, and I've always believed in fairness, honesty, and treating people with respect. I had never imagined that those beliefs could be used against me, twisted like a knife into humiliation and pain. I lived in a small apartment in the heart of the city, the kind of place where neighbors knew your name but never your story. It was a comfortable life, predictable and quiet, until Jason entered it. Jason was 29, charming at first glance, with an easy smile that made people trust him immediately. That charm, however, was a mask. Behind it, he was cruel, manipulative, and deeply insecure. He thrived on control, on making others feel small so that he could feel powerful. At first, I did not see it. I thought I was in love. I thought he was different. His mother, Margaret, was even worse. A sharp-tongued woman who smiled only when someone else faltered. She seemed to encourage Jason's worst impulses. She would laugh when he mocked me, nod approvingly when he dismissed my feelings, and stare with icy eyes when I tried to assert myself. I soon realized that they were a team, working together to ensure that I would never feel secure in their presence. I had known Jason for 2 years. The first year was magical, filled with laughter, excitement, and the intoxicating feeling of being wanted. But the second year revealed the cracks. Little comments became constant criticism. Friendly teasing became public humiliation. I learned to walk on eggshells, always trying not to provoke him, always hoping that one day he would see me as an equal. The party that would change everything was at his apartment. Decorated with glittering New Year's lights, mirrors reflecting the city skyline, and the faint scent of expensive perfume lingering in the air. I had spent hours getting ready, picking a dress that made me feel strong, styling my hair carefully, and practicing a smile that could hide the storm brewing inside me. I had expected warmth, fun, and celebration. Instead, I was met with whispers, smirks, and the unmistakable tension of people waiting for the next drama to unfold. Then I heard it. "Where the hell have you been, USL*T?" The words cut through the room, sharper than any knife I had ever felt. The laughter that followed was deafening. His friends, his mother, even strangers who had no business judging me, all of them, watched as my dignity crumbled in seconds. My chest tightened, my heart pounded, and for a brief moment I could not breathe. I wanted to disappear, wanted to run out into the cold night and never look back. But deep inside, a spark ignited a fire I did not know I possessed. That spark whispered that this humiliation would not last, that justice would come, and that I was stronger than they thought. As the party continued, I kept my composure, smiling politely, nodding at conversations I did not want to join, and observing everything around me. Every smirk, every whispered joke, every glance directed at me was a puzzle piece in the plan I did not yet fully articulate, but felt growing in my mind. He had underestimated me. They had all underestimated me. By the time the clock approached midnight, I felt a strange calm. The room was filled with sparkling lights and the buzz of champagne glasses, but my focus was sharp, my senses heightened. I could feel the weight of the humiliation still pressing against me, but instead of breaking me, it was fueling me. I was ready. I just had to wait for the right moment. He thought that laughter would bury me, but he had no idea that I was already planning his downfall. And New Year's Eve would reveal everything. If you have ever been humiliated, betrayed, or underestimated, hit that like button and subscribe. This story is about the kind of revenge that is long-awaited, perfectly executed and utterly satisfying. Watch closely. This is a lesson in turning pain into power. The days after that party were unbearable. Jason did not stop. If anything, his behavior grew worse. He mocked me in front of friends, laughed when I struggled with minor mistakes, and made snide comments under the guise of humor. His mother stood nearby, smiling coldly, as if she had trained him to humiliate me perfectly. Every interaction became a test of patience, a reminder that I was powerless in his eyes. At work, he would send me messages with thinly veiled insults, pretending they were jokes. He would comment on my appearance, my decisions, my habits, all while smiling that infuriating, self-satisfied smile that made me want to scream. Every word he spoke, every glance he threw, chipped away at my confidence, and yet something inside me refused to break. I could feel a shift, a subtle strength rising from the ashes of my frustration. I started noticing patterns. The way he leaned back when he laughed, the exact phrases he used to cut me down, the way he assumed no one would ever challenge him. Every detail became a piece of information, every slight a clue. I could feel the beginnings of a plan forming in my mind. Patience would be my weapon, observation, my shield. I would not react impulsively. I would wait for the perfect moment. The humiliation was relentless. At one gathering, he pointed at me and said loudly, "Look at her. She tries so hard and she still fails." People laughed. I felt my cheeks burn. My hands trembled, but I held my head high, swallowing my anger, letting it simmer beneath the surface. I could hear my internal voice whispering, "Remember this. Every insult, every sneer, every laugh will come back to him." I began documenting everything. Small notebooks filled with observations, notes about his habits, details about the people who were often around him, moments when his arrogance would shine the brightest. I realized that revenge would require precision, timing, and strategy. Impulses would ruin it. Anger alone would not suffice. I needed patience. I needed control. Then came the incident that pushed me further. Jason, in front of a crowded room of mutual friends, decided to make a scene over a misunderstanding I had nothing to do with. He shouted, mocked, and laughed, and his mother joined in, clapping and egging him on. I felt the familiar sting of humiliation, but this time, instead of crumbling, I noticed something. Every action, every laugh, every insult was predictable. It was rehearsed, and that meant it could be manipulated. He thought he was untouchable. He thought no one could see through his arrogance. But I could, and I knew exactly how to use it against him. I started observing more intensely, memorizing who would be present at gatherings, noting the timing of his jokes, the way he distracted people, even the way he carried himself. I learned his weaknesses, his pride, his desire for attention, and his need to appear superior. Every interaction became a rehearsal for what was coming. It was exhausting, living in constant alertness, but the anticipation made my heart pound with excitement. I was no longer just surviving his cruelty. I was preparing. Every humiliation fueled the fire inside me. Every insult sharpened my focus. I could almost feel the plan solidifying, a quiet storm gathering behind my calm exterior. He was playing with fire, and he did not even know that I had learned to control the flames. When the right moment came, everything he thought he had conquered would crumble. By the time New Year's Eve approached, I was ready. Not just emotionally, but strategically. Every insult, every sneer, every moment of public humiliation had been carefully cataloged, waiting for the moment when they would all serve a single purpose. I would not act recklessly. I would act decisively, and he would not know what hit him. The night I reached my breaking point began like any other, but I felt a storm building inside me that I could no longer ignore. Jason had spent the evening belittling me, making subtle jabs disguised as jokes, while his mother laughed with a satisfaction that made my blood boil. Every word he spoke felt like a weight pressing down on my chest, suffocating me slowly. I wanted to yell, to cry, to run away, but I did not. I clenched my fists, feeling the tension in my shoulders, the tightness in my jaw, the anger twisting like fire in my stomach. I realized that the problem was not him, or even his mother. The problem was my hesitation. Every time I had tried to ignore the humiliation, to be patient, to wait for the right moment, I had done so with uncertainty. But now uncertainty had transformed into clarity. I could feel it deep inside me, a resolve that was sharper than any fear, stronger than any doubt. I knew at that moment that nothing would ever be the same. I had to act, and I had to act perfectly. I thought back to every insult, every laugh, every public embarrassment. The memory of the party where he had called me ASL*T made my cheeks burn even now. Months later, and yet it also fueled a strange exhilaration. That humiliation had lit a fire inside me, one I could no longer ignore. I understood that the power I had been seeking was not given, it had to be taken. And I would take it carefully, deliberately, and without mercy. Every strategy I had been building over weeks suddenly fell into place. The observations, the notes, the subtle tests of his pride and arrogance, they all converged into a single clear path. I could almost see it in my mind. The look on his face when he realized that he had underestimated me. The shock, the disbelief, the humiliation. I allowed myself a small, satisfied smile, feeling the rush of adrenaline mixing with a calm, almost meditative focus. He had controlled the narrative for so long, but I had learned every weakness, every pattern, every flaw. The moment of truth was coming, and I would not fail. I remember pacing my apartment that night. The city lights glowing through the windows, reflecting off the polished surfaces around me. Each step, each breath sharpened my determination. I rehearsed my plan silently, visualizing every movement, every gesture, every expression. Timing would be everything. Patience would be my weapon. And restraint would be my shield. I had waited long enough. It was time to execute. The anger inside me had transformed into clarity. It was no longer blind rage. It was strategy. It was precision. I was not seeking revenge out of spite. Alone, I was seeking justice, balance, and the restoration of my dignity. And I understood that it had to be perfect. If I faltered even slightly, everything could collapse. But if I succeeded, everything would change. I could feel it, the tension building inside me, the anticipation of the moment when I would finally turn the tables. And I knew with every fiber of my being that he would never see it coming. By the end of that night, I had made a promise to myself. I would no longer allow anyone to undermine me. I would no longer endure humiliation silently. I would act, and I would act with precision. Jason's arrogance, his mother's cruel approval, and the laughter of those who thought they were superior, they would all be undone. I would reclaim what was taken from me. I realized that the perfect revenge was not about yelling or fighting, it was about timing, control, and the exquisite pleasure of watching someone get exactly what they deserved. And in that moment, the fire inside me became unshakable. I was ready. I was patient. I was determined. I was unstoppable. The stage was set, the players were in place, and New Year's Eve would be the night when everything changed forever. Once my resolve solidified, everything around me began to look different. Every conversation became a source of information. Every interaction became an opportunity. I stopped reacting emotionally and started observing strategically. Jason believed I was still the same quiet, patient woman who absorbed his insults without resistance. That illusion became my greatest advantage. While he continued to perform his cruelty with confidence, I was quietly assembling the pieces that would dismantle him. I began by securing allies, not through dramatic declarations, but through subtle honesty. I spoke carefully to a few people who had witnessed his behavior and quietly questioned whether they had noticed the pattern. I did not accuse, simply described. Their expressions shifted from confusion to recognition. Some nodded slowly. Others looked uncomfortable. That discomfort told me everything I needed to know. They had seen it too. I documented everything more precisely. Dates, times, witnesses, exact words. I wrote down the way his tone changed when he thought no one important was listening. I noted how his confidence soared when a crowd formed. His arrogance depended on an audience. Without one, he was fragile. That realization became the foundation of my plan. I started rehearsing scenarios in my mind. Where would he be most vulnerable? When would his guard be lowest? What environment would force him to confront himself without escape? I visualized it repeatedly until it felt inevitable. The image was so clear that my heartbeat slowed instead of racing. Calm replaced fear. There was a strange power in preparation. Every time I wrote another detail, I felt my posture straighten. My voice grew steadier. My smile became more genuine. I was no longer surviving his cruelty. I was directing the end of it. I practiced my composure in front of the mirror, studying my expressions. No anger, no hesitation, only control. The success of my plan depended on my ability to remain unshaken. If he sensed aggression, he would retreat into mockery. But if I appeared calm, confident, and precise, he would unravel on his own. I gathered proof. Messages, recorded conversations, screenshots, patterns of behavior that could not be dismissed as jokes or misunderstandings. Each piece felt like armor sliding into place. I did not rush. Rushing would mean mistakes, and mistakes would give him an escape. There were nights when I lay awake, replaying the humiliation in my mind. His words, the laughter. His mother's approving smile. Each memory tightened my chest, but instead of breaking me, it sharpened my focus. Pain became discipline. Anger became clarity. I chose the timing carefully. New Year's Eve, a night of reflection, a night of witnesses. A night when people expected celebration and honesty. He loved attention. He loved performing. I would let him walk into his own exposure with the same confidence he always carried. I prepared the setting, lighting, positioning, visibility. I made sure there would be no shadows to hide in. No quiet corners to retreat to. Everything would be open. Everything would be undeniable. I rehearsed the moment I would step forward. It's the way I would breathe. The way I would stand. It's the way I would speak without raising my voice. It's great. My strength would not come from volume. It would come from certainty. Each day brought a new layer of readiness. Each hour strengthened my control. I was not nervous anymore. I was focused. I tested small reactions, tiny changes in my tone, slight shifts in confidence. Jason noticed but misunderstood. He thought I was becoming submissive. He mistook silence for surrender. That mistake would cost him everything. There was a moment alone in my apartment when I finally allowed myself to smile. Not out of cruelty, but out of empowerment. I had reclaimed ownership of my narrative. No one was writing my ending except me. The plan was no longer just an idea. It was alive. It was breathing. It was inevitable. And the most powerful part was this. I did not need him to change. I only needed him to remain exactly as he was. The night of New Year's Eve arrived, and everything was set. The apartment glowed with golden lights, reflecting off champagne glasses and sparkling decorations. Music filled the air, but it felt distant, almost irrelevant compared to the tension I carried inside me. Jason was oblivious, laughing loudly, basking in the attention he craved. Every gesture, every laugh, every boastful comment made my chest tighten with anticipation. I waited, perfectly composed, my pulse steady, my mind focused. I stepped forward as the countdown began, positioning myself so that all eyes would fall on me when the moment came. I did not rush. I did not speak yet. I let him bask in his arrogance, letting the seconds stretch, letting his ego grow heavier with each passing moment. Then I spoke, calm, measured, precise. My words cut through the hum of celebration, and immediately the room shifted. Conversations paused. Glasses froze midair. All eyes turned toward us. Jason froze too, his smile faltering. I think it is time everyone sees the truth, I said. my voice steady, unshakable. Time to understand exactly who has been mocking whom all this time. The room was silent except for the faint clinking of ice in glasses. I revealed everything. The messages, the recorded conversations, the subtle manipulations he had performed for months. I spoke clearly, describing each instance of cruelty, humiliation, and arrogance. I did not yell. I did not plead. I let the evidence speak for itself. Jason's face changed slowly. Confusion first, then disbelief, then the flash of panic. His mother gasped, her lips pressed tight, eyes wide. The people around us murmured, some in shock, some in admiration. And I felt it, the release, the weight of months of pain and planning finally lifting from my shoulders. I watched him realize, in slow, painful seconds, that he had been underestimating me the entire time. He opened his mouth to argue, to deflect, to laugh it off. But he could not. Every excuse I had anticipated. Every lie he could invent. The room would not allow it. Friends he had thought loyal looked at him with disbelief. Even strangers, who had no prior context, could sense the imbalance of power. I paused deliberately, letting the tension stretch, letting every second of discomfort land fully on him. His hands trembled slightly, the bravado slipping like sand through fingers. I could see the tightness around his eyes, the flush creeping across his cheeks. He was unraveling in public exactly as I had planned. The final moment came as I presented the recordings. Laughter erupted, but it was not at me. It was at him. The arrogance he had worn like armor melted under the heat of exposure. I felt an overwhelming surge of relief, validation, and triumph. Months of fear, humiliation, and careful planning coalesced into this single, perfect moment. For the first time, I felt untouchable, respected, and powerful, and he felt every second of it. The crowd shifted to my side. Friends whispered support, strangers nodded. He tried to recover, but there was no path back. Every insult he had thrown at me returned like a mirror, magnified and undeniable. And in that moment, I understood the truth. Revenge is not about cruelty. It is about restoring balance, reclaiming dignity, and showing strength where weakness was assumed. I took a deep breath, letting the adrenaline fade, letting the calmness settle in. I had done it. I had won. Not by force, not by anger, but by patience, precision, and confidence. I had turned the humiliation into empowerment, the fear into control, and Jason. Jason was silent. His mother avoided my gaze. The arrogance that had defined him crumbled like fragile glass. I smiled quietly, confidently. I had not only survived, I had transformed the narrative. I had reclaimed my life. In that moment, I understood that the sweetest victory is not anger. It is control, patience, and the satisfaction of being seen for who you truly are. The clock struck 12. Fireworks blazed outside the window. The room cheered, but I barely noticed. I only noticed the calm, the strength, the release. I had taken back my power, and nothing would ever make me feel small again. The days after New Year's Eve were quiet, almost eerily so. Jason avoided me completely, his arrogance replaced with careful silence. His mother no longer smiled at my presence, her approval stripped away. The people who had witnessed the moment of truth treated me differently. Not with pity, not with fear, but with respect. And I realized something profound. The power. I had felt that night was not just in exposing his cruelty, it was in reclaiming myself. I walked through my apartment one morning, sunlight streaming through the windows, and felt a lightness I had not known for months. Every detail of the revenge, every calculated step, every moment of patience had not only restored my dignity, it had changed me. I was no longer the person who felt small in the shadows of others' arrogance. I was someone who could act with clarity, confidence, and precision. I understood the value of observation, of patience, and of using intelligence over anger. I had learned that strength is not loud. Strength is quiet, deliberate, and unstoppable when wielded with control. I thought about the months of humiliation I had endured. The parties, the whispers, the mocking laughter. Each memory once brought pain, but now they served as a reminder of resilience. I had transformed those experiences into strategy. I had turned fear into action. I had converted anger into discipline. And in that transformation, I discovered a new form of freedom. No one had forced me to execute the plan. No one had handed me justice on a silver platter. I had earned it. That realization was intoxicating. It was the purest form of empowerment I had ever felt. And it was a lesson I would carry forward. Dignity cannot be stolen if you are willing to reclaim it deliberately, with foresight and courage. Revenge is not mindless. It is not petty. True revenge is art. It is patience, timing, and understanding the weaknesses that others assume you cannot see. I also understood something else. Closure does not require forgiveness. Jason would not apologize. His mother would not acknowledge her role. And I did not need them to. Closure was internal. It was the calm that follows the storm. It's the understanding that you have reclaimed your narrative, that you have turned pain into empowerment, that you have ensured that no one can ever undermine you so easily again. I began to notice subtle changes in my own life. I walked taller, spoke more confidently, and smiled more freely. I felt lighter, not because the past was erased, but because I had mastered it. I had faced humiliation, endured cruelty, and emerged stronger. And for the first time in a long time, I believed that no one could make me feel small again. The sweetest victory is not the humiliation of others. It is the restoration of yourself, the reclamation of your strength, and the quiet confidence that comes with it. As the weeks passed, I reflected often on what I had learned. Patience is more powerful than impulsive anger. Observation is more potent than confrontation without strategy. Strength is measured not by reaction, but by controlled action. And dignity, once taken, can always be reclaimed if you have the courage and intelligence to act. Looking back now, I smile at the memory of that night. Not out of cruelty, but out of gratitude, for the clarity, for the empowerment, for the lessons learned. I was no longer a victim. I was the author of my story. I was the person in control. I was unstoppable. If this story inspired you or gave you chills, hit that like button. Share your own most satisfying moment of empowerment in the comments. And subscribe for more gripping, emotionally charged stories. Remember, strength is not given. It is earned, patiently, deliberately, and with confidence.